Towson, great trepidation. The good news is Duke is out. The bad news? Maryland's out too. This guy was in Orlando last week with All Things Terps. He, of course, has called the games along with Johnny Holiday on the Terps Radio Network. We welcome Chris Nocky back for Chris. You know what I called and texted you a requiem for the 16-17 Terps, but this one didn't sit so well, and I don't think it's going to sit well for the next 6 months. It was really a flame out at the end of the season, which is really a shame because it was a fun season, man.
Yeah, first of all, Nestor, I appreciate the fact you said requiem and not autopsy. Because one man's requiem is another guy's autopsy. But, yeah, I agree. You know, I mean, in October, if we were talking about 24 wins, we all would have been ecstatic. Then the narrative changed with a 20-2 start. And given the 20-2 start, I think you have real mixed emotions about the season. And it hit the floor. You know, those last couple of games just really disappointing. The way they went, the way they were played, the way they unfolded, and ultimately some of the things that plagued the Terps all year long plagued them in those games. You know, the rebounding, lack of production from the 5 spot, inability to get critical stops, in critical junctures and those kinds of things. And all the chickens came home to roost.
Yeah, I think it's difficult from a fan's perspective. You know, I throw something out on Facebook, and it's, Melo didn't hit shots, and, they didn't have the rebounding, they didn't have the size, they didn't hit the shots when it mattered, they didn't play up to the occasion, they certainly didn't play well in big gyms. In that NBA arena, and I know you and I laughed about it a little bit last week with Jackson, missing the whole thing, and, and we talked about how big Orlando was. There's just something about them moving along and being such a good road team earlier. But then, you start to hear the whispers about Turgeon and great recruiter, getting good kids there, and then can't make chicken salad. I mean, you were a coach for a long time, and aspired to this kind of level to have the kind of kids out there to put them in a position where they can win games like this, and they have it in them. You've seen that in the past. Then there's getting it out of them, and when Melo doesn't make shots at the end, Mark Turgeon's the village idiot, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was, consensus at the end of January. He was consensus Big Ten Coach of the Year, and then by the end of February, he was, as you say, the village idiot. So it's amazing how fast it turns when you're nailing jump shots and you're getting wins. Everything looks rosy, and I get that. That's part of why these guys get paid the money that they do. But he's been a good coach in a lot of different programs, a lot of different levels. He's a good coach now. And, Nestor, just to kind of put it in perspective, Gary Williams' run at Maryland, it took him 4 years. Now, of course, he had the NCAA sanctions and all that. It took him 4 years to get into the tournament. And when he did, in the first 3 years that he got into the tournament, he was a 10, a 3, and a 7 seed. So, you look at Turge, and they took them 3 years. They were out for 3 years. The fourth they get in. And, they go, I believe the seeds were a 5, a 4, and then a 6. So I think the arc is kind of the same. It's just a different way of doing things. And I think there are a lot of people, the complaint I hear about Mark is that I hate his offense. I don't like his offense. Well, it's funny. When we were hitting shots and nailing threes, shooting from the three-point line in league play in January, everybody loved it.
It's a hell of an offense when you're hitting 65%, right? I mean, really is.
Yeah. So, but it's like anything else. It's like any other offense. When it's being run well, run correctly, and guys are making shots, it looks fantastic. So, you know what? You got to move on. It'll be interesting to see where we go next year in terms of personnel, because there will be some changeover, obviously, with Melo on the fence right now, and there might be some other attrition. So there are a lot of variables, but I don't think Mark Turgeon in the captain's chair is one of them.
Well, I think the village idiot on this side could say, well, it just all fell apart at the end, and then I'd say to you, break it down for me, Chris. I mean, what do you think went wrong? I mean, in retrospect, if you were grading yourself and you had coached this team, I don't know what you would have done differently or how you would have done it, but in retrospect, you look back on the last couple 3 to 4 weeks of the season, and certainly the last 2 games against Northwestern and Xavier, where they just they didn't really give themselves a chance in the last 10 minutes of those games by hitting shots. Is it as simple as shot selection, bad shots, errant shots, or were there things about it that just fundamentally you look at and say, well, they were kind of doomed from the start?
Well, I mean, fundamentally there were some issues that were sort of masked early by clutch play and by pretty good defense that reared the ugly head when they weren't getting the clutch plays or playing consistent defense.
Well, let's be honest. If you're in a close game and you're not hitting clutch shots, you're going to lose every time. Right? I mean, it really is about clutch, right? It's 36 minutes. Let's keep it close, and then what's going to happen in the last 4 minutes, right?
Well, but the other thing is Nestor, think about this. And people, we got a lot of pub, particularly Melo, and you get a lot of pub early in the season for the clutch play and the last-minute wins, right? And so, but people focus on the offensive plays, the buckets that are scored. Ultimately, to get to that point, they usually have to be defensive stops made in huge situations that aren't sexy. They don't really get the pub. They don't really get the notice necessarily that the big shot does. So those things the Terps were able to do. You think about Georgetown, you're down 9 inside of 2 minutes. You pretty much have to pitch a shutout. Now, everybody talks about, the great plays, Melo getting the line, Melo making the shot with 7 seconds left, blah, 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 blah. But, I mean, it was the defense that ended up winning that game. And the defense over the last 3 weeks was lost, just kind of non-existent. You think about the way Iowa and Minnesota lit us up at Xfinity, there was not a stop to be made or to be found. So that was part of it, And
that really pisses you off as a coach, right? Because everybody can play defense, right?
Yeah. And the other thing is that the other thing that pisses you off is, the team set the bar very high for themselves by the way they played, offensively and defensively, energy-wise. And when you don't get a team to live up to that, to that bar, to that standard, it's infuriating because you've seen the best you can be. And then when you don't get it, it'll rile you up. There's no question about it.
He is ex-coach Naki out on Twitter. He is Chris Naki, longtime voice of Terps basketball on the Terps Radio Network, along with the man, the myth, the legend, Johnny Holiday. Word is you've been a valet at various points, and Walt Williams also has said that that's the case. So where do the Terps go from here, right? This is a waiting game on Melo Trimble right now. I think he's a hell of a lot more valuable to the Terps than he is to an NBA team right now moving forward, and certainly didn't play his way into the first round. I don't think that there are NBA scouts out there saying, well, we got to get him in the late part of the first round. I think he's in a precarious situation, and I've talked to a lot of people. I had my old pal Brian Rousum on, who has coached ball over in Japan and over in Qatar and over in that part of the world, now over in Israel coaching as well, and says there's a life for players like that to go make hundreds of thousands of dollars, but that's not the eye on the prize for a kid like Melo is, I want to play in the NBA, I'm going to start in the NBA, I'm going to cut nets down in the NBA. I don't know who's seeing that right now outside of his inner circle, other than if he could go make a couple of $100,000 next year playing somewhere, D-League, whatever it is. But, we went through this last year. This is not a new process for him. He knows what he's about to undergo, right?
Yeah, but one of the things I think he learned, I hope he learned this, is that the sitting on the fence, the playing the waiting game, kills you. Kills you for this reason. Melo decided not to hire an agent, which was his call completely. So he goes and he competes in Chicago against guys who had hired agents and who trained and balled 24/7. Melo stayed in school, to his credit, stayed in school, he took classes. He worked out with college kids, in College Park. So by the time he shows up in Chicago, I think he's at a pretty severe competitive disadvantage in a situation like that. And so I think if he learned anything, if he paid attention at all, it's that if you're going to go, you got to hire somebody and basically use those 2 months to train your ass off, to be as fit as you can possibly be, to be as sharp and as ready as you could possibly be. Otherwise, you really, I don't think you stand a chance in a situation like that.
Well, what is he right now? He should be as fit as he's been, game conditioned, out under the bright lights, in a team setting, in a high-pitched environment, and it hasn't gone well lately. Honestly, I mean, we've been watching it, at least in the framework of this offense with this team, with this competition right now. He hasn't looked good lately, so I don't know, where you pick that up to say it's going to look any better for anyone, because they are going to put the film on, right? I mean, it's a film league still. It's what did you do against Purdue? What did you do against whomever, right?
Yeah, but Nestor, you know what? Yeah, there's no question that's part of the evaluative process. But if he goes to Chicago and rips it up, then that becomes a hell of a lot more important to the NBA guys, because they're not seeing him against like guys, against NBA level talent. And so I think that's a lot more valuable to, in a college game, in a college setting. And again, I would agree with you that he did not perform well down the stretch, didn't shoot the ball well, but he was also such a marked man in every game that we played. You go to Chicago, where every one of these guys was the best player on their college team. It's not going to be that way for him, and that might help him. The fact that he doesn't have to shoulder the kind of responsibility that he shouldered, and it may actually end up being a good place for him. I guess we could see here very soon.
Chris, you think he's gone?
I think in all likelihood, yeah, I do. I think that, and I know nothing about any internal pressures with his spokes or his circle or anything like that. I know of nothing there. I just think that in this day and age, when you expect a guy might go, he's going to go, almost invariably.
He is Chris Naki, ex-coach Naki, former college basketball player and coach, and with the Terps Radio Network, you can follow him at ex-coach Naki out on Twitter. So for the rest of this tournament, dude, it really sucks, right? I mean, I don't know what that is, waking up on Friday morning in Orlando and coming home and, that feeling, but I do know from a fan, and I don't mean a bracket thing or circling teams, which I'm really not all that into at this point in my life, but it's just from an interest level. There were some good games played on Saturday and better games played on Sunday. But it's really, once Mount St. Mary's and Maryland's out and there's no rooting interest other than hating on Duke on Sunday, which I am guilty of, and it all worked. Whatever pins we stuck in the little dials of the Duke guys and Allen, and it worked. But, now the rest of this thing is on, and there's some great basketball yet to be played, but it's hard to get fired up for it. Even some of these great games, like this Purdue-Kansas thing, right?
Yeah, Purdue-Kansas should be a great game. Also, you think about UCLA and Kentucky. They played a hellacious game earlier this year, and UCLA won it rough. I got to tell you, Nestor, one of the things that I'm enjoying, and I never really, after the Terps were ever bounced, as ACC members, and we were bounced from the tournament, I never sat there and rooted for other ACC teams. But right now, I find myself rooting like hell for Big Ten teams, because it was really kind of everybody had fun dumping on the Big Ten all season long. It's not very good. Teams are all really, really mediocre. And now all of a sudden there are three teams, in the Sweet 16 and one ACC team. And I'm taking kind of a really nice I'm enjoying that part of it.
Well, what about Michigan, right? I mean, there's no better story than that at this point.
Oh, my God.
And certainly that party got started on Thursday, a week and a half ago down in D.C.
Incredible. And, it also, the older teams, I thought, you look at Wisconsin, too. Michigan is a terrific story. Evidently Wisconsin played rope-a-dope this season because they sort of meandered through the conference season. Now, all of a sudden, with the money on the line and a trophy on the line, they're playing like the team everybody thought that they were going to be. Veteran-laden group with a lot of moxie, a lot of balls, just really tough guys. And so between them and Michigan, I think in the starting lineup between the two schools, you've got 7 seniors. And that goes a long way to surviving the peaks and valleys of the season, and both of these teams have done it.
How about Xavier knocking his snot out of Florida State after beating up on the Terps? And, all we heard about in the days leading up to that after the seedings came out was, they don't have their point guard, and they're suspect at this, and they're woeful at that, and they're not very good at this, and they can only beat DePaul. And, they're going to be the ones out in San Jose this week. I had to cancel my flight, Chris.
Well, yeah, I think Chris Mack does a great job with them. They have a really dynamic scorer on the wing in Trayvon Blewett, and they're feeling it right now. They're playing. you had no pressure on them going into the NCAA tournament. They played their way in with a great win against Butler, but they came in with very little in the way of expectations or pressure, and they've capitalized on that. And they just drilled Florida State like, the redheaded stepchildren. And that's a remarkable win, maybe the best win of the tournament, and maybe the most surprising score of the tournament by far.
I think we're all going to hate on UNC, once this thing gets going and be Butler fans this weekend. But it's not as much fun as hating on Duke. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's a pretty color, and God bless them. I don't necessarily care whether they win or lose either way. I don't have a lot of black hats in this tournament. If Gonzaga does well, God bless them. If UCLA, I don't want to see Kentucky win, and Kansas, they lose every year. It's just a matter of when. But they are the darling right now, right? I mean, they're the team that's playing the best, Kansas.
Well, Kansas also gets 2 games in Kansas City.
Sure.
Now that doesn't guarantee anything. I mean, Duke lost in 2012 and 2014 at sub-regional games in the state of North Carolina, so you're not a lock necessarily to win, but it's going to help them a lot, and they look terrific.
What can be a better pathway? If you're Rock Chalk and you go back to Danny Manning, right, you're the 1 seed, you kicked everybody's ass, you're playing at home, it's all sitting there for you if you're Kansas. You can only kind of screw it up, right? I mean, there'll be a lot of hard feelings if they go down on Thursday night, right?
Oh, my God, yeah, no question. There'll be a lot of questions to answer, and I just don't see them losing on Thursday necessarily, but you know what? Stranger things have happened.
Already.
Perhaps things have already happened in the tournament. Yeah, no question.
Hey, man, great having you on. Always great to visit. And, once we get out of basketball season, enjoy yourself down there with the Beltway life. We're up here in Baltimore slumming it along, but hopefully Melo Trimble stays from a fan perspective. Time will tell. But it's been great visiting with you all year long. Appreciate your expertise and your views, Chris.
All right, thanks, Nestor. Appreciate it.
You got it. He is ex-coach Naki out on Twitter. Always enjoy our visits with Chris Naki, one of the voices of Terps Radio, along with Johnny Holiday and Walt Williams. We'll miss him. We'll miss the Terps on the radio. We'll miss the Terps on television. We'll miss March Madness. But, hey, at least Brent DeFries keeping us afloat here for a little while. Good luck to the Lady Terps as well. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox. PlanetFitness.com does that every morning at 7 a.m. And if you're on our WNST tech service, you know how good it is. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis will be here on Thursday driving you home, getting you ready for basketball, getting you ready for the weekend. And if there's any more breaking Ravens news, little Kamar Aiken on Tuesday. What is this stuff happening every day? You'll get it first on the WNST Tech Service. Always brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. You can find me anytime, anywhere on the internet, on your mobile device. Just throw me a note, nasty@WNST.net. Any information you need on the London trip, we'd love to have you along. You can also find us there, nasty@WNST.net, or road trips under the WNST.net upper tab. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook. And if you missed head coach Barry Trotz doing a little sit-down with us at Greenmount Station the other night amidst some tasty crab cakes, you can check that out as well anywhere the internet is served. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.